This is Wildcat Country.
Larson tipped it. Love has it. Lewis slams it, and Arizona wins it.
The inside scoop on the Arizona Wildcats.
It's Gunnar Maldonado. He's got blockers. Touchdown, Arizona.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to bear down.
Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country presented by Harrah's Auction Casino. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale. And all right, Shane. Things were going great. Saturday was great for the men's team. And then, Tuesday night was not so good.
No, well, you put it into perspective, and we'll talk about it. But I mean, look at. There's two ways to look at it. Number one, Arizona lost to about a 500 team that made just one 3-point shot. On the other hand, and this is the way I choose to look at it, because I'm always an optimist.
Always the optimist.
Always the glass half full guy. Is Kansas State has been on a roll. The Arizona's missing one of its starters, and they only lost by 3 points on the road. So don't sweat it. I think we know who this team is at this point. They were going to lose some games. We don't necessarily think it was going to be this one. You were a little more cautious about this game than I was. I had Arizona winning by a decent margin. I think you had Arizona winning by 3, something like that, which I think was the spread.
It was right on the number. Yeah.
Right on the number. Yeah. But, we have a good idea who this team is. They're a pretty good team. They'll bounce back. Will they hit more bumps in the road before they do? We'll have to wait and see.
We'll talk about a bunch of things on this show, but before we get into buy or sell, I think it's time to bring back Shane's standouts because there's a lot of good stuff going on right now.
It's all of the sports, not all the sports, but a lot of sports are happening now. So we want to mention some other some standouts from non-men's basketball, and we'll start with a couple of Big 12 players of the week. Eric, Kaya Altmaier for the softball team, she hit 667 with 5 doubles and had the run roll walk off. Say that 5 times fast. To beat number 11 Alabama a few days back. So she's off to a great start. She's a junior, I believe. On the men's tennis side, also Big 12 player of the week, Jay, his last name is spelled Friend, and I've never heard it pronounced, so I'm hoping I'm pronouncing it correctly. But he is the men's tennis Big 12 player of the week after helping Arizona sweep Pepperdine to improve to 8-1 on the season. You could definitely make a case that they are the best program on campus at the moment. There's some other contenders there, but they're one of the best. Brea Cunningham had 16 points on 7 of 12 shooting and 8 rebounds in Arizona's win over ASU. Women's team is now 6-7 in Big 12 play after just losing to Oklahoma State on the road. They got a big test coming up, another one hosting number 11 TCU on Sunday. And finally, a little bit off the wall, Eric, but I want to mention Autumn Lockwood. She's a former Arizona soccer player who is a performance coach for the Super Bowl champion Eagles. She played for Arizona soccer in 2013 and 14. She became the first black female coach to win a Super Bowl. So,
wow.
Big congrats to Autumn. Kind of a cool thing. Even though I'm a little sad that Nick Foles is no longer the only quarterback to ever lead the Eagles to a Super Bowl championship, that was kind of a cool anecdote.
Yeah, it was a great find there. That is why it's good to bring back Shane's standouts. So good stuff there. All right, time for buy or sell. We'll get right into it. Number 1, Shane. I'm going to say it again. Arizona goes as Caleb Love goes, and it's doubtful they can go very far if he plays like he did on Tuesday night.
Yeah, well, just to back up for a second, I feel like Arizona took the Texas Tech's mantle of the hottest team in the Big 12, and then K-State abruptly took it from Arizona.
Right.
Their record's not impressive, but they've been one of the hottest teams in the country the last couple of weeks. Arizona was down Trey Townsend, one of their starters, even though I know how Arizona fans feel about him. And they still almost found a way to win on the road. But yeah, I'm going to buy the question just like I did last week. I think, the big takeaway from this past couple of games, Eric, is Caleb Love can impact the game in a number of ways. He doesn't have to shoot lights out to have a positive impact. He didn't shoot well against Texas Tech, but he did play outstanding defense. He had 6 assists, and he got to the free throw line. He made 7 of 9 attempts from the line. He did not have nearly as big an impact overall against K-State. He went 0 for 7 from 3, but he only had 3 assists, didn't get to the line at all. He wasn't as aggressive as Arizona needed him to be. I sort of have mixed feelings about Tommy Lloyd encouraging Caleb to keep shooting. He's talked about that during press conferences. He always tells him the next shot's going in. I understand you want to show your belief in the guy, give him confidence, but when the shots aren't falling, especially from 3, maybe encourage him to take it to the hoop a bit more, pass the ball a bit more, remind him he can impact the game in so many other ways, which I'm sure Tommy is. But Arizona has other playmakers. They don't have to rely on him quite as much. But he's averaging nine. Caleb Love's averaging 9 3-point attempts in Arizona's last 7 games, just a shade under 9. He's made just under a third of those attempts, including 1 for 13 in his last 2 games. So look, he's the alpha on this team. He's the guy who's not afraid to take over. You need guys like that. I just wish he was a little bit more calculated at times. And I don't think he's a selfish player by any means. I just think his decision making isn't sometimes the best. But to go back to your question, he is who he is. He's in his 5th season of college basketball. Not going to change. And yeah, Arizona's going to likely live or die in the tournament with Caleb Love, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, and I think that's it, Shane. I just don't think that this team is going to be able to go on a long run if Caleb Love does not put together a sustained period of success. I think when Caleb Love scores 20 plus points, Arizona's going to win the majority of the time. Oh, yeah. And we've seen that this year. I mean, I would have to look at this statistic. I mean, I'd have to go and look at how many times he's done it this season and what their record is when he scored 20 points. But the fact of the matter is, I would assume it's pretty darn good. I would assume, let's see, in their losses to West Virginia, 24. In their other 2 losses, Duke and Wisconsin, he had 6 and 8. Against Oklahoma, when they lost, he had 17. Against UCLA, he had 7. So that's one time he scored 20 points. Against Texas Tech, the first time, 9 points. They lost. Against Kansas State, 6 points. Now, when he scored over 20 plus against ASU, Iowa State, obviously that was kind of fluky. Oklahoma State, TCU, Central Michigan, Samford, West Virginia, as I mentioned, Davidson. So Arizona's lost 1 game when he scored over 20 points. That should be the key. The other key I've noticed for this team, totally independent, when Arizona scores 80 or more points, they have only lost 1 time, and it was to Wisconsin.
Yeah.
That should be a magic night, and that was just kind of a fluky night with all the fouls and everything like that.
Yeah.
If you're watching a game and Arizona scores 80 points, they're probably going to win. Now, I don't think they're going to do that against Houston next week or on Saturday. I'm sorry. I don't think they're going to do that. No. However, that's a number going forward that I would keep an eye on.
Yeah, and I think I threw out a stat a few weeks ago, but it's before the Iowa State game that Caleb Love against Arizona's 7 best opponents to that point was shooting just under 22% from the field, I believe. I don't think that number's changed too much, even though he had his late game heroics against Iowa State. But again, there's different ways to, you could shoot 4 for 13, for example, from the field and still get to 20 points as long as you're aggressive and go to the line. And Caleb Love's capable of doing that. It's when he's just kind of settling on taking outside shots. That's when I get a little concerned, and I think since he's transferred to Arizona, Tommy Lloyd's constantly challenged him on there was a reporter who asked him, like, are you challenging Caleb Love on defense? And Tommy sarcastically said, no, I'm just letting him do what he wants. Yeah, of course I'm challenging him on defense. What do you think? I think he's gotten better at a lot of the little things, diving for loose balls, being a better defender, and passing the ball as well. He's not a point guard, but he's become a better passer. He has to impact the game somehow. Scoring is obviously the best way for him to do it, but there's different ways to get to 15 or 20 points. And one way is sometimes you're just more aggressive and, you go 4 for 13 from the field and 8 for 10 from the line. And that's fine too, as long as you're making an impact in other areas as well.
All right, let's go to number 2. Arizona's in the midst of their toughest stretch of the season, in my opinion. So a split this weekend against Houston and Baylor is plenty good enough, buy or sell.
I'll buy, although I don't think it's quite that simple. I want to see how competitive they are in both games. If they play well and lose by a field goal to both teams, yeah, it's going to suck, but it's not necessarily the end of the world. But yeah, as tough as their schedule has been to this point, which is crazy, arguably their 3 toughest games in the conference are still coming up. They got home against Houston. They're at Iowa State. They're at Kansas. And at Baylor is not going to be easy either. But if you're just thinking tournament seeding, then yeah, I think the NCAA has their pre-bracket top 16 coming out on Saturday, I think. Yeah, I think Arizona might have been a 3, and losing to Kansas State probably knocks them down to a 4, maybe even a 5. But a split over these next 2 games, before we reconvene for our next show, will probably be a wash, and we'll probably keep them on whatever seed line they're currently at.
Yeah, I think you need a split. Now, I'm not going to panic. Don't get me wrong. If Arizona loses the next 2 games and they're both are close, I'm not going to panic. They get blown out. Because at Baylor, I know Baylor's not great, But Baylor, I mean, this a couple weeks ago when Arizona played Arizona State, Baylor was getting run by Kansas at home in the first half, came back and beat them with a strong second half. That is no gimme. Baylor has a lottery pick in Edgecombe on that team. I would be
And they're
very
getting
careful about
healthier
that.
too. They're
Yeah,
healthier than they were when they played Arizona the first
yeah,
time.
I would be very careful. We'll make our picks later in the show. Houston's going to be a tough game as well. I think this is a very difficult stretch for Arizona at Kansas State, the way they're playing. Houston, obviously, how good they are. And then Baylor at Baylor. If it was in Tucson, it'd be one thing. Now, next weekend, when they play BYU and Utah at home, I think it kind of eases up before that stretch of at Iowa State, home ASU, at Kansas. That's
Yeah.
also kind of brutal. So the next. At this point, I think if you go 500 between now and the end of the season, just kind of all things considered, yeah, I'd be okay with that. I know a lot of people are thinking I'm crazy, but this is a really tough part of the schedule. Just don't get blown out.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, look, if Arizona ends up losing to both Houston and Baylor, I'm not panicking. Unless you're a super elite team like UConn was last year. I don't think we have any of those this year.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're a super elite team, you're going to have peaks and valleys. Look at Iowa State. It lost on essentially a Hail Mary to Arizona. And they got
Right.
their clock cleaned at home against Kansas State. And they lost at Kansas pretty soundly before they finally stabilized in their last two games. They're still an elite team.
Mm-hmm.
They just had a rough couple of weeks. I think that loss to Arizona demoralized them a little bit. Now they're getting back on their feet. So much of the NCAA tournament just comes down to timing and whether you're riding a peak rather than a valley when March rolls around. So if Arizona ends up riding a three-game losing streak heading into the game against BYU at McKale a week from Saturday, so be it. I would like to not see that, but and yes, it'll mean they won't win the Big 12. That's the only thing that's going to mean. It'll hurt their tournament seeding a little bit too, but we've seen how good this team can be when they play their best. And I've said it before. I don't think, and I'd like to see some stats on this, but I just from what anecdotally from what we've seen in the last few years, I don't think seeding matters as much as it used to. You
Right.
see one seeds get upset. You've seen more two seeds, including Arizona, get upset. I think it comes down to matchups and timing more than anything else.
All right, that's fair. I mean, I can't disagree. I do think I will say this, and I know we're going to talk to our special guest who we haven't even teased yet, Reggie Geary, going to join us in the second segment of the show. We're going to talk to him about this question as well. But I think that Arizona's, the toughness of what they're going through right now. This is like the heart of the good days of the Pac-12, Pac-10,
Yeah.
when the UCLA's were really good, and there was always the Washingtons or Oregon State or Cal and Stanford. You're finally getting a conference where top to bottom it's really good. I mean, there are very few layups in this league outside of Colorado.
Yeah.
Outside of there are no true layups. Even ASU when they play
Yeah.
McKale Center on March 1st, not a layup.
No, well, it's just tough to win on the road in general. I think like the ASU game, like, years ago we would have been disappointed in such a close game, but this time it's like just find a way to win in Tempe. ASU is a decent team and the rivalry isn't quite what it used to be. But if you look at the schedule, Arizona has 7 more conference games. They're 11-2 at the moment. If they go 4-3 the rest of the way, considering their schedule, that's not bad at all. That would mean a 15-5 record and going into the Big 12 schedule, especially after their non-conference schedule, that would be a dream, and likely would mean a 2 or 3 seed in the Big 12 tournament, which would mean a double bye in that tournament. So you'll have to win 3 games to win the whole thing, fewer chances of injuries going into the big dance. They should certainly beat BYU, Utah, ASU at home. Emphasis on the word should, the latter two especially. And if they win one of the other 4 games and they're at least competitive in the losses, I think that's fine. Although, to the point you've made many times, I don't know if fans are going to look at it that way.
No, we
But
know
I
they're
think
not. We know
But I
they're
think in
not.
the grand scheme of things, 15-5, as long as they keep looking as sharp as they have, Arizona could play very well at home against Houston and lose. They could play very well at Iowa State and at Kansas and lose. That's just the nature of this conference. And the good news is in the NCAA tournament, there are no more true road games. They all end here.
I will say this, Shane. The double bye, I think it's very important,
Mm.
and I in the Big 12 tournament to be able to win 4 games in 4 days is extremely unlikely. I mean, we've seen it. The ACC, what NC State did last year and everything like that. I would prefer Arizona get that double bye, and as it stands tonight, they have a 3-game advantage over Kansas, who's in the 5th spot. So
Yeah.
at this point, if Arizona goes 15-5 in conference, you're probably a lock to get the 3 or 4, if not
Oh
if not
yeah,
the 2 seed in the
yeah,
Big 12. Yeah.
no doubt.
So I think any more than 5 losses get a little more concerned. I'll
Gets
say that
dicey.
as far as that double bye goes. All right, number 3 here. As of today, let's predict it right now. How many games does Arizona win of their final 7 conference games?
Well, let's start with the games that should be the easiest.
Well,
Utah and
yeah, I mean, yeah, I was gonna. Sorry, don't predict this because we're gonna give this weekend's picks later on. Just give me an overall number, whatever you want to say. Let's make it easy.
what I think they'll do.
Yeah.
I said if they go forward through the rest of the way, that's not bad, and I think that's about right. I won't go more in depth than that, but I think the scenario I put out is very plausible and probably what I would go with as of now. But yeah, I think it. You start 11-2 and then you finish 4-3 in the conference, or 4-4 overall if you count the loss to K-State. 11-1 and then 4-4. You think that's not great, but I'll tell you that you look at their net rankings and they're as long as they keep playing the way they have at the Ken Palm, they're not going to slide that much. So I think 4-3, 15-5 overall record in the Big 12, I think is about right.
Would you be surprised if they lost a game at home the rest of the way?
No. Well, I mean,
I actually would.
Beyond Houston. I know we haven't made our picks yet. Beyond Houston, I would be surprised. Put it
Okay.
that way.
Okay, fair enough. Number 4, and we'll make our picks later in the show for this weekend. Number 4, Shane, the women's team has only one path into the postseason. They must now win the Big 12 tournament by yourself.
I think we're almost there. So I will, I guess, sort of buy. They're coming into Tuesday. They're number 59 in net, only one quad one win and some bad losses. Unlike the men's team, they don't have a lot more chances for quality wins. They do have one at McKale Center on Sunday against number 11 TCU, which is tied for first in the conference. That's about it. If they don't win the Big 12 tournament, then likely a win over TCU plus a couple wins in the Big 12 tournament might be the only alternative. A win or a win at Utah or Colorado would have been big. They erased an 18-point deficit at Utah and took the lead in the fourth quarter. And Utah's a good team, but they couldn't hang on. So yeah, on the women's hoop side, the Pac-12 really did present more opportunities for quality wins than the Big 12 does. It's like, this late in the season, you're thinking, okay, well, they're doesn't look like they're going to make the tournament, but then they have, say, 7 or 6 games left in the conference, and there's a good chance at least 4 of those are going to be quad one. But that's not the case in the Big 12. It's kind of the opposite of the men. And they just don't have a lot of more chances to make a statement. So I think, you lose the game to TCU, which is likely, then you're probably looking at having to win 4 or even 5 games in a row in the women's tournament.
Yeah, it's not looking so good, and let's hope Adia finds a way to retool this offseason because they had chances we talked about the other week, and I think those are pretty much out the window. All right, number 5. What is an acceptable season as far as postseason results go for baseball and softball this season? Now, last year, I want to preface this with, hey, we just said, hey, make the tournament, great. And baseball ended up winning the Pac-12 regular season and conference tournament title, and then softball got to the second round. So in that way, they both exceeded what we would have expected. Now I would say the stakes are a little bit higher with both ranked going into the season. So where do you put those? What are your expectations? We'll just put it that way.
Yeah, relative to expectations, Eric, I think kind of the same thing. Regionals for baseball and super regionals for softball. The baseball team, they're ranked going into the season. They lost a lot of starting pitching from last year, although they've done a decent job restocking their rotation. They have some of the better relievers in the Big 12 as well. They got some great hitters. I just think there are only a handful of teams each year in college baseball that are or should be immune to those early upsets. Obviously, Arizona wasn't last year. I don't think they're necessarily going to be again this year. So, there's a team that, going in, you'd think, okay, maybe they have another chance to host a regional or be a 2 seed in a regional. But when you get to that point, all bets are off. For softball, I still think they're missing a true ace. They have a lot of hitting, some decent pitching, and I think that should be enough to get them in the final 16 again. They're ranked 15th in a couple polls as of now. I don't think it's enough to get them back to Oklahoma City. So I say super regionals again for softball. And I mean, regionals for baseball at the minimum. I mean, I think last year was a little bit different because we were thinking, okay, that this team at least needs to make regionals. Well, this year that's a no-brainer. I just don't think they're in that category of, well, they're definitely a team that definitely should make the super regionals, because I think outside of the maybe top 6 or 8 teams, it's really tough to pencil that in.
Super regionals for both. I'm going to keep it real simple here. Chip Hale has to prove he can win a postseason, win a bracket in the postseason, win something outside of his conference, and I mean, you have to do something when you make it to the tournament. They've won what, one postseason game in his tenure at Arizona, or one.
Yeah.
I'm not talking conference tournament, but one,
Yeah.
NCAA tournament game. Probably not good enough.
Yeah, I think he's raised the expectations, and I think he'd probably agree with that as well. I just think last year I feel like he was kind of playing with house money. No one expected Arizona to be that good in a conference. I mean, Oregon State is a baseball school first. There are few schools I think of as baseball schools, but Oregon State's one of them, and they barely beat out Oregon State to win that conference, and then they won the tournament championship too. So I give them a lot of credit for that. I know they flamed out early in regionals, but in year three, let's give the guy a little bit of credit. With that said, I agree. You have to expect the team to win games in the postseason at some point, and I think that time has arrived. I just don't think they're a lock at this point to do that.
As always, Wildcat Country is brought to you by Harrah's Auction Casino, and bear down, Wildcat fans, because it's time to spin to win up to $6,000 at Harrah's Auction Casino. It's easy. Just sign up for Caesar's Rewards, play your favorite slots, and earn entries to spin the wheel for your chance to win up to $6,000 in free slot play. What's even better, you'll get $10 in free slot play just for signing up, and the more you play, the more entries you'll receive. So get ready to spin to win only at Harrah's Auction Casino. Play for all. Coming up next, Reggie Geary, who calls the games with Brian Jeffries on the road, going to join us. Also, Wildcat legend, I think that's fair to put. Wildcat legend Reggie Geary joining us next here on Wildcat Country. Shane, he's back from Manhattan, Kansas, where he called the game last night with Brian Jeffries. Former Wildcat basketball legend and color analyst Reggie Geary joins us on Wildcat Country. All right, Reggie, let's talk about something positive before we go to the game last night. Do you believe this is Tommy Lloyd's best coaching job with Arizona?
Yeah, I would have to say so, just in terms of how the season began. Struggling there in the non-conference a little bit. There are a lot of question marks about, all the hype around this team, and they were underachieving to that point. And for him to kind of go to his tool belt and make some adjustments and kind of reconfigure the team a little bit, and for that to in turn get them hot, winning, I believe, 13 of the last 15, and really put them back in a national conversation. Yeah, it's definitely done an excellent job.
Hey, Reggie, first of all, thanks again for joining us. And Eric called you a former Arizona basketball legend. I'm sure he meant to call you a current Arizona basketball legend, but I just wanted to make sure we get that right. I hate to talk about things that went wrong if someone's just gone right, but Arizona losing to K-State. I mean, the other Wildcats have been on a roll lately. They beat Kansas. They won at Iowa State. And Arizona was still in it. They were missing Trey Townsend. What are your overall thoughts from that game? And was Trey Townsend's absence a factor in your opinion?
Well, yeah, I mean, first off, give all credit to Kansas State. They did an excellent job there. They're one of the hottest teams in the country, if not Big 12. Yeah. Just in terms of when you look at the numbers, offensive, defensively, what they're doing over the last 2.5 weeks, it's been pretty incredible what Jerome Tang's done there. Having said that, I look at it like Arizona almost had to play that poorly just to lose by 3. I thought there was a real opportunity in the first half. I thought K-State had a little bit of a hangover after that Kansas big win at home where they were flat. Here we are 29-22 into the first half, and we're feeling we're not playing well, but we're still in control. And then they go on this 13-0 run. And so instead of going into halftime, Arizona maybe up 7, they find themselves down 6. And so, and then you saw the second half, even though we won the second half, just didn't do enough to close out that game to win it. So, all credit to Kansas State. Wasn't one of Arizona's best games. The absence of Trey Townsend, I definitely thought it played a part for sure. Just losing his experience off the floor was big. I think you can get away with kind of, moving around your lineup a little bit, and they got away with that in the Texas Tech game. But now to be on the road, to have a freshman Carter Bryant at the 4 spot, for one example, for heavy minutes, really, having to do some of the assignments defensively, and what that took, there were some breakdowns, and just overall, they just never got really into a good rhythm throughout the night. And I thought that was reflective in the 17 turnovers and the 25 points off of turnovers, things that were uncharacteristic for an Arizona team.
Yeah, and something that's concerned me, Reggie, and it's been kind of on the back burner since they've been winning, but it's come up now since they lost the game. Is I feel like the one thing about this team that drives me crazy is I think they take too many 3-point shots. It's not what they're best at. They're 32% from 3-point range this season. I feel like they shoot about a dozen a game. That's a little bit, unless they're hot, unless they get hot early in the game. If Love and Del Orso get going, that's fine. But when they're not falling, I'd rather them be more aggressive, take it to the hoop. Rely on some of their big guys to maybe grab some offensive rebounds. What are your thoughts?
No, I think that's an excellent point, Shane. When this team is playing its best is when they have a high points in the paint production, when they're attacking the rim, when they're playing downhill. Usually when that's occurring, they're getting to the free throw line, getting to the bonus early. The free throw category has been huge for Arizona. Since they're a team that does not shoot the three well, manufacture a lot of points from the arc. They have to get to the free throw line. They've done a great job of that. So when they're settling or taking force for bad threes, which happen at times, that's not to their benefit.
So, Reggie, I want to ask you something that I've been asking Shane for the last few weeks, including this week. Is Arizona's success in the tournament pretty much reliant on Caleb Love having a good game, or can this team win number of tournament games, so more than one game, let's say, with Caleb Love having a 3 for 12 game?
I don't know about a number of games. I'm always a big believer that your best players, your All-Americans, your Player of the Years at the biggest moments, they need to step up. Could they get away with that for one game? Yes. For multiples, I'd be hard pressed. They need his production. When he's on, he's been fantastic. Last night against K-State, they played 4-on-4 and just tried to take him out of the game. And it took us a while to kind of get the ball into his hands there late in the second half, into some middle pick and rolls and try to see if he could be effective. But I think we need him to play well. But having said that, this team collectively, all 8 guys, have to play well night in, night out for them to be an elite level team.
What's your take on the Awaka-Vesar duo when they're in the lineup together? Is that a smart move, or is it smarter to maybe keep one of them rested so you can substitute one for the other at any given time?
Yeah, I'm a big Henry Vesar fan, especially as a 4. I think he's that unicorn, that stretch guy. Last night I was internally screaming like, "Man, shoot that top of the key 3! Like, I know you can do it." So I do like that. Obviously having Mo Kribis and Townsend and maybe Emmanuel Steffen on board would help that. Instead of just playing with 2 or 3 bigs. But I love that 4-5 matchup with Vesar because he can be a stretch 4. He just needs more confidence. And then Toby Awaka is just a low down there on the post.
Reggie, what are your overall thoughts on Carter Bryant? He's had some big games and big moments for Arizona, and he's maybe beyond Caleb Love. He's not afraid to take some late shots. We saw it against Iowa State in overtime and against ASU. Your thoughts on his maturation, and fingers crossed on this one. Would he benefit from coming back to Arizona for at least one more year, even though he's a projected first-round pick by a lot of sites?
Yeah, I'm a big Carter Bryant fan. Not only as the basketball player, but the person. He's just a genuinely really high character young man, and I just love being around him. I think the beginning of the year there were some expectations. He's not, 5-star McDonald's, all those things that come with that. I thought he was a little wide-eyed. It took him a little bit of time to transition and adapt to the college game, and I think he took it in the right way. I think he jumped into the laptop, he got into the gym, got extra shots, he did all those things you want to see a young player do, and then you start seeing the lights come on a little bit, and he started having those moments where he wasn't so hesitant. And offensively, he's got a beautiful stroke. He definitely can stretch the floor. Loves that corner 3. Defensively, he really has the opportunity to be an elite level defender. He's kind of a 3-and-D guy at the NBA right now until he kind of works on creating off the bounce a little bit. But he's a special talent. He's going to be a great player. I could see why the NBA is so excited to have him. Should he stay next year? Of course. Having said that, if you can fool these guys and get in, not that he's fooling anybody, but if you can get in that first year and get some guaranteed years underneath you, it's always a good move.
Eric already asked you about the coaching job Tommy Lloyd's done this season. Compare this team to the last, each of the first 3 that Tommy's had at Arizona. They're not as likely to be a 1 or 2 seed, obviously, this year. But talent-wise, do they stack up with those teams?
I think they do. Tommy inherited a really good team when he first came in with Tabellus, and I believe it was Koloko and Mathurin was on those teams. Was that the first year?
Yes, sir.
So that's a pretty good team right there. There's a lot of pros we just mentioned. This year's team, maybe not as top heavy talent wise, but collectively, I think it's a stronger unit. But once again, Tommy likes playing with that 7-8 man rotation. And when you do that, it's a very, very fine line. As you see, if you just remove one guy from that equation, it's a little bit of a domino effect in terms of some of the results. And so I think he's done a great job. This is definitely I think one of his better defensive teams from head to toe. When you look at the guard position, Lewis and Carter Bryant and Jaden Bradley and all those guys, even Caleb Love has really bought in this year defensively to go along with, Vasar and a walk in the post. This is one of their better teams. I think 5 of their 7 are fairly strong. So that's what has me excited.
All right, so let's talk about Del Orso, Anthony Del Orso. So he starts last night and he takes the first 3 shots of the game, and you're like, I know you're a good shooter. I want you taking threes, not twos. What's your take on just his role with this team? I personally believe he'll get better in future seasons. Right now, I don't know if he's ready for the prime time. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, he's interesting. He first of all, Anthony's got the job I always wanted. I just wanted the job where people just said, just shoot. Right? If you got it, shoot it. The big thing for Anthony is when he's on the floor, he has to be offensively aggressive. Yeah. Extremely offensively great, because that's the one thing he does at a very high level. He shoots the 3 when his feet are set. He does have the ability every now and then to get inside the paint and make some things happen. But if he's not shooting, he doesn't bring enough intangibles to really be on the floor. He rebounds, I think, 1.5 a game, maybe 1 assist. So production-wise, you're not getting much there in terms of that. So if he's going to be on the floor, 2 things he has to do. He's got to shoot the basketball. He has to be offensively aggressive. And second, he's got to take care of the basketball. I think when Tommy starts seeing him struggling against pressure and balls are getting deflected and he just seems to have, no escapability, I think Tommy's quick to pull him and not really quick to go back. So, Anthony has a good role. He just has to kind of double down in that and just be a little bit tougher with the basketball.
Now, I hate to ask this question but it's fair, because this is what my friends and I are texting about during the game. Last night, let's say under the 10-minute mark, you see Conrad Martinez come in the game. Arizona has a lead. Immediately, Kansas State goes down the court and scores right on Conrad Martinez. He's a very good distributor of the basketball, but he's just too small. Should he even be playing in meaningful minutes honestly, how do you defend him playing meaningful minutes for this team?
No, I mean, I'm a fan of Conrad's. I think I don't think it's too small. And every time he's out there, I'm rooting for the young man. Come on, give us a couple solid good minutes. The big thing is he has to give Bradley an opportunity to sit on the bench for a second. Last night he played 38 minutes, I believe. He had 5 turnovers, which is not characteristic, Jada, but I believe a lot of that is just fatigue. It's just night in, night out, 35 plus minutes as the primary ball handler. That's a lot. And so you need a guy like Conrad. He has shown it at times. I think last year there was an opportunity in the tournament where he provided some good minutes. He's provided some good minutes on a couple of occasions. And so I don't think he's too small. He's just got to be tougher. I've played with some small guards. I played with Damon Stoudemire and Terrell Brandon. I played with other guys that were under 6 feet tall. And all of them, Avery Johnson, they took it as an insult. They doubled down on the physicality. And so Conrad just has to learn, how to use his size to his advantage, which he does offensively, but defensively has to be a little more physical.
Reggie, you played in a conference that back in the day was, I would say, about as tough as the Big 12 is now. How much did that benefit you guys going into the NCAA tournament?
It benefited us a lot. The fact that you're playing, back in the day when it was the Pac-10, that Thursday, Saturday game, they were going to be 2 high-level games. Yeah. And we did that week after week, month after month. So when we got into the tournament, having those, the 2 games in succession like they do in the tournament, it wasn't a big deal for us. We were used to that physicality and speed that came along with that. We always thought that was our advantage, that we play a mid-major team that maybe won their first game and now they're playing their second. Well, they might have been spent. We were kind of used to that type of grind. So, just being battle tested like that definitely helps you along the way. But the big crux to that, the caveat to that is, are you beat down by the time you get to the tournament? Does the Big 12 play just grind up Arizona? Now they go into league play and, with their 8-man rotation, are you healthy enough to take advantage of that? So I think there is something about playing top-notch talent, being a top-notch league, but you just got to make sure at the end you still have something to take for a big run.
2 more for you, Reggie. You had the full experience in the NCAA tournament, your first year at Arizona, losing to the 15 seed and some hippie named Steve Nash in the first round. And then the next year you go all the way to the Final Four. And I think you guys are probably the second best team in that tournament. Corliss Williamson and Arkansas were on a mission. But how much of the tournament just comes down to I don't want to say luck, but just timing and just the matchups that that luck of the draw.
I mean, that's what makes it such a beautiful tournament. It's all those things. Like you want to be playing your best ball at the end of the season, and so you're working towards that goal. You do need to get a little luck in terms of the draw and just kind of where your team is at. Keep in mind, my junior year, another unfortunate kind of tournament run was excuse me, Miami of Ohio. We played them in Dayton of Ohio. We walked into the
Oh, yeah.
gym. It was a home game, and so we were unlucky in that result. It wasn't our best team. We were in a hostile situation. I think it was a little bit of a wink, wink for the NCAA in terms of they got us on that one. But you need a little luck. You need to be playing your best ball. You need to be healthy, and you need all those things to come together at the right time.
All right, and great, and I think a lot of times, especially early in the tournament, like the neutral fans will root for the underdog, which can kind of, I think, can hurt if you're a very higher seed. Last question for you. I know when you made the run to the Final Four, you guys were the better seed, except for up until the Elite Eight when you ran into the 1 seed Missouri. You had to wear the road jerseys for that game, the dark jerseys in that game. I kind of feel like this team may benefit because all of Arizona's teams so far in Tommy Lloyd era have always wore the home jerseys. They've been the supposed favorites going into each NCAA tournament game. Do you think maybe this kind of team might benefit from having to wear the road jerseys in a game or two in the tournament?
It's interesting, obviously, when you go back and look at the Final Four runs and during Coach Ols's time here, a lot of those were because we were positioned in the West Coast, that we were in the West region. We were able to take advantage of that home court advantage and that energy that the great Wildcat fans bring to every arena we're in. And so I think that plays a big part of it. Going on the road is difficult. I think this team has got better at kind of wearing that black hat and being a bad guy on the road, a role that I loved. And I think that they're starting to now embrace. And so, yeah, it really is kind of a matter of where you're going to be and kind of how it plays out when I do the seeding.
All right, my last one for you, Reggie. You get a chance to travel to all these different venues, a lot of which are new for Arizona fans. How does the McKale Center compare to the road venues that you have been to thus far? Is there one that you would say has impressed you and is closer to the McKale Center than maybe some fans would think?
Well, I haven't been to Fog Allen yet, so I'm going to leave that out. Being that the case, McKale is in my mind, the best arena in the Big 12. When it's going and it's lit up and the crowd's on their feet and how they were for Iowa State, how they were for Texas Tech. I mean, the place is rocking. We're hearing it from visiting fans like, man, that was a fantastic basketball experience. Having said that, BYU, 18,000 loyal fans, who stayed the entire game. That was a great environment to be in. Texas Tech and Lubbock has another nice Cincinnati. I know Ames, Iowa. I've heard nothing but great things about there. And so even West Virginia, it's a smaller venue. Has really good acoustics where the sound just kind of sits on you. And I'm telling you, that mountaineer in that canyon, he's popping that thing off. They shoot it 3 times during the game, and every time I jump. So the Big 12, it's legit. The crowds are good, and I think we're benefiting from it.
Let me just follow up real quick on that, Reggie. I feel like one of the big reasons the McKale Center has such a home court advantage is because for a long time there wasn't a student section. When you were playing there wasn't a student section, so the whole crowd kind of had to depend on each other. I think a lot of arenas, the students section makes a lot of noise, and the rest of the arena just kind of sits on their hands until they need to get up. I feel like McKale Center is more special because everyone, like Bill Walton would say, like rises as one, and I feel like that's kind of a product of not having a student section for so long. Does that make any sense?
No, that makes really good sense. We've kept some of our prime real estate for our season ticket holders, and so our students are behind the North Basket. But yeah, I think we have a knowledgeable fan. I love what Walton said there. I love anything he says actually. But the fact that we are one, and that when we're on our feet, we have a knowledgeable fan base. It's 4 decades strong. We're now on grandkids, and I love the family atmosphere that's in there. But when I always say the old lady's got some nice bones in terms of. That place still lights up and it still rocks, and it really, our opponents really feel it.
I will say one more thing for you, Reggie. When you go on the road, you take a lot of you take pictures and you kind of you put it on social media, and I think it's pretty cool that you do that. For those of us who are new to these venues, you're like, all right, I'm here, and so I really appreciate that. Just as somebody that follows you on social media, so I just wanted to point that out. But always appreciate having you on Wildcat Country, and I'm sure, considering the way things have turned around, that we'll have you on before the end of the season if you're up for it.
Eric, Shane, anytime, man. I'd love to come on. You guys do a great job, and just supporting the Wildcat Nation. Like I said, we got a good team this year. Stick with the guys. We got a chance to go on a run.
Discover more Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino.
Hi, folks. Here are your drinks.
Where having fun means racking up reward credits with the Caesars Rewards loyalty program that can be redeemed for food, free play, hotel stays, and more. Not only here in the city of Maricopa, but also at more than 50 Caesars properties coast to coast. From Harrah's Las Vegas to Caesars Palace in Atlantic City. What are you waiting for? Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino, the official sponsor of Play.
Great to catch up with Reggie. Great analysis. Got a lot of questions, so we covered a lot of ground with Reggie, and it's time to make some basketball predictions. Shane, I'm up 3 on you. You went 0 for last week. Joe Lopez from the Texas Tech site, he got 1 right, and I got 2 right. I picked Arizona by 7 over Texas Tech. Pretty good pick there. Let's pick our Big 12 unranked road win. What do you got?
I mean, Colorado, UCF at Colorado. Until Colorado wins a game, I can't pick Colorado in any game until I see them win one. I picked them a couple of weeks ago to get off the. In fact, I think it was Colorado at UCF is what I picked. I'm going the other way around this time. I'm going to take UCF, and I'll tell you that I wonder if Tad Boyle's seats just getting a little warm. Colorado had a pretty good team last year, but not so much this year.
I would say very, very, very hot at this point. Yeah. When you're 0 for in conference, very, very hot. All right, Shane, there wasn't a lot to choose from. You took the one that was most obvious. I'm not left with a lot. I don't love it, but Kansas State at BYU. I mean, since we're talking unranked versus unranked, I think that, Kansas State can go and, continue their hot streak at BYU. But both teams kind of fighting for the postseason, and I think this is a really make or break game for both teams when it comes to the NCAA tournament. So I'm going to go with Kansas State, but I'm not confident in this because that was, just trying to fit the rules here. How about ranked non-Big 12 upset? Give me something where we're going to see a top 25 team go down, as we see often from an unranked team.
Not a big upset, but I'm going to take Illinois over Michigan State. Illini just won a tough home matchup with UCLA. Michigan State's coming off a surprising home loss to Indiana. Umar Ballo had a double-double in that game. And I'm going to say another former Wildcat, Kylan Boswell, has a good game and helps Illinois win at home.
I am going to go with an interesting one here. I'm going Texas over Kentucky. Now, Kentucky just swept Tennessee during the regular season, which was kind of surprising to me. But at home, Texas just got buried. I think it was by Alabama on Tuesday night. Alabama #1, and they play Auburn #2. It's pretty cool to see the Iron Bowl basketball rivalry 1 versus 2 on Saturday. Yeah. But I'm thinking Texas to pick to give the upset here over Kentucky. I'm not sold on Mark Pope's team. And I know he's not playing, but any team with Kirk Kriisa on it, it's a fade for me. He's hurt, by the way. All right, let's go Houston at Arizona on Saturday, Shane. I'll give you my pick first. Because you don't know what I'm thinking, but, well, you probably do. I mentioned it earlier in the show. I would be surprised if Arizona loses another home game. Now, do I think Houston is arguably the best team in the country? Yes, but they showed some cracks the other week with their home loss to Texas Tech. I think Arizona at home with that crowd, I wouldn't be surprised if this goes either way, but I think Arizona needs this game to keep up the momentum. So I'm going Arizona by 3 at home. Not overly confident in this pick.
Yeah, there are 3 teams, Eric, ranked in the Ken Palm top 10 in both offense and defense. Arizona already faced one of them at home, and they got blown out. Arizona's a better team now, but Houston is still by far the best defensive team in the conference, maybe the country. They lead the Big 12 in points allowed by far and also in field goal percentage allowed. I think the game comes down to rebounding and Arizona's ability to limit Houston's three-point shooting. Arizona and Houston are 1 and 2 in that, and 2 in that order in Big 12 in rebounding margin. And Houston is the best three-point shooting team in the conference. They have 5 players in their regular rotation who shoot at least 39% from 3. I think Arizona needs Trey Townsend back for this game. Hopefully he's back from concussion protocol, even though I know he's not the best player on the team by any means. But for depth purposes, like Reggie said, I think Arizona needs a full 8-man rotation to win this game. The other element, too, you talk about the McKale Center crowd. Houston's undefeated on the road this year. They're 6-0. I know Texas Tech was undefeated on the road, too, before coming to McKale, but I'm going to pick Houston, and I'm sure people who've listened to me long enough knew I was going that way. I'm going to pick Houston to get the win. I think Arizona struggles a little bit before they turn things around again. I'm going to take Houston by 7 points.
By 7, okay. Let's go to early next week, Arizona at Baylor. I'll make my pick here first once again. This one, to me, if Arizona's coming off a win, I'm just not overly confident. I don't know why Arizona is better than Baylor, don't get me wrong. This game kind of scares me, and it's another one of these stupid late games that we're going to see. I hate it, but at least it's on Monday night this time, so we get big Monday, so I guess that's kind of exciting. But the fact is, Shane, I'm just not confident that Arizona finds a way. This is a tough stretch, and if you win at home, that's what's important. Defend your home court. I think Baylor gets it done at home, and I'm going to say Baylor by 6. All right, what do you say?
Yeah, Baylor has one of the biggest home road splits in the Big 12. They're 2-7 on the road, including their loss at Arizona, 11-1 at home.
Wow.
Their only home loss was by 3 to TCU of all teams almost a month ago. But
kind of surprising.
But they've won their last 3 in Waco. They're getting healthier, like I said in the first segment. Langston Love, who's a very good 3-point shooter, is back. So is Jalen Celestine. Arizona didn't have to face either of those guys when they met in Tucson. Baylor actually has the worst 3-point defense in the Big 12. So regardless of everything I said in the first segment, this could be a game where maybe the Wildcats want to fire up a few more from the outside. Even though I feel like keeping, generally 10 to 12 3-point shots is their sweet spot, but if Baylor's allowing some good looks, so be it. But I think this is a game where Arizona, and even the Houston game as well, where Arizona can play well and simply get beaten by a good team on the road, especially as you get later in the year and teams are playing more for seed, not just in the NCAA tournament, but in the Big 12 tournament, and you focus on that a little bit more. Like Baylor's probably going to get into the NCAA tournament, but they're not a lock, and a win against Arizona would definitely help their chances. So I am going to take Baylor to win this game. You said by 6. I'm going to be way more optimistic and say Baylor by 5.
Okay, so if you're correct, Shane, and Arizona were to get swept in this run here and go lose 3 straight, are we starting next week's show and you're panicking, saying, all right, this team had its good run, they peaked too early, it's over, we're done here, on to baseball season? No,
it's like I said, it's peaks and valleys, Eric, and Arizona was going to have another valley at some point, and maybe this is it. And as long as they get it out of the way, it's all about timing. You have your valley in February, you have it in March. You have it in February, then maybe you have a peak in March. It sounds ridiculously simplistic, but I feel like it means a lot in terms of the confidence that you're playing with going into the tournament. So they get this, even if they do lose both games, and I hope I'm wrong. Like I always say, I hope I'm wrong, and usually I am. That's good news. But if they lose 3 in a row, I'm not panicking. It's going to hurt their seeding a little bit. They're not going to win the Big 12, but we've seen how good they can be. And as long as they stay healthy or get healthy going into the tournament, I think they'll still have a chance as big a chance to make a run as most teams.
And that is why I'm going to say this right now, my last thing for the show. I believe Saturday's game for Arizona is the biggest regular season game of the season. Just where it falls, the outcome that we saw before, the road game afterwards, 1-2 in the conference. I think this is the biggest regular season game for Arizona, and I think a win is a must here. I really do. You can't lose 3 in a row because it kind of kills the buzz on this team that we've seen throughout the year. I'm not saying I would be panicking, but it does kill that buzz that we've been.
No, it absolutely does. But they have a chance to get it back, and but there's 2 ways to look at it. Either this is like Iowa State. This is the beginning of a slump for Arizona, or they get a wake up call and say, "Look, you guys, we haven't arrived yet. We got a lot more work to do." They look at it that way, and they hopefully get Trey Townsend back in the lineup and go back to a solid 8-man rotation. And then maybe they come out with a win, and I'm horribly wrong like I usually am.
Thanks to Reggie Geary for joining us in the show. Thanks to our sponsor, Harrah's Auction Casino. Always great to have them a part of Wildcat Country. So for Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. Thanks for listening, and as always, bear down.